Hi, I'm Rick.
Hi, I'm Oscar. Rick, you want to talk about maps?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Azure Maps. So, the reason I actually wanted to do this was one of our colleagues asked for a postal code API because he wanted to have a postal code and house number put in a service and then the service providing an address. Since when you're in a website or in a web shop or whatever and you want to fill out your address, it's easy if you just put postal code house number there and it will auto complete the address. Now, normally you would go to, here in Dutch, postcode.nl or postalcode.nu for...
Yeah, there were multiple services doing that.
Yeah. But Azure Maps does that and a whole lot more. So I wanted to...
But Azure Maps? Like, I know Bing Maps and Google Maps and...
Well, Azure Maps has been around for quite a while now, actually. And they are now in their second generation of the service. And they have a lot. So they do maps, but they also do geolocation, and they do traffic, and they do imagery. So there's a lot of information combined in Azure Maps.
Yep.
It used to be called Bing Maps,
Yep.
also when it was inside of the Azure
so it was
ecosystem.
it's the same service.
It's the same service, but now I think times 4 as far as functionality goes.
Cool.
So let's dive right in. So first of all, I would like to talk about costs, since all of our services that we have in Azure, of course, do something with costs. And then if you look right here, you can see that there's a relatively large free grant available for Azure Maps as well.
Yeah, you see with public services there are also some free tiers, of course, but they're throttled quite fast.
Yeah.
And from that moment you also need to pay some kind of form of subscription, so that there are costs invoked is logical.
Of course.
But I see different tiers and different regions. What does it mean?
Yeah, well, so actually, so the tiers is actually the number of requests you're doing. So if you look at search, and I'll highlight it on my screen, search, the first 5,000 requests each month are for free.
Yeah.
So you can do 5,000 search requests within the normal range. Then if you go to tier 0, that's actually all of the requests below 100,000, you will pay €4.51 for each 1,000 requests.
So it's not really a SKU tier that you pick advance, it's just stuff-full discount kind of.
Yeah, and then I calculated if €4.50, it means less than half a cent per request for the first 100,000. And then if you go upwards of 1 million, then we're in tier 3, you're only paying 51 cents for 1,000 requests. So it gets cheaper as soon as you start using it more and more and more.
Okay.
Now the reason I actually zoomed in on the search call that we have is because I have this small little demo. I'll open up Visual Studio Code. This is actually all of the code that we need for the demo. And then in the end, what happens here is we have a base address that we actually talk to. So that's atlas.microsoft.com. And in this case, we're going to the search API, and then we're going to do a structured address search, which means I can put in a postal code and a street number and a country, and then it will automatically come with a list of addresses that match whatever you're searching for, and then you can pick the best one if you want.
And I see you have a client ID that's like an API key that you put in the headers for every request.
Yeah, well, actually you have two. So you have the client ID, which is actually the ID of the client that's using the service.
Yeah.
And then you have a maps key, which we can see here on line 25. So you also need to have a subscription key for the API that you're using.
Okay, makes sense.
So what we're doing here is, and I know this is not a perfect while loop, however, it enables me to do a couple of requests one after the other, so that's fine. It actually says, enter a Dutch postal code and a house number, and then it will do a request and go out there. And what we see here is that we want to have a JSON structure, or at least we would like to request this in a JSON format. And then we can specify the country code, and in this case we've explicitly set it to be NL for Netherlands. Then we'll add the API version, and then of course the keys, the maps key, for the subscription key that you use to talk to the API. And then we have postal code and street number or house number, and that's enough to do the request. Now there's some other code here, and that's mainly because of the serialization for the camel case property name contract resolver. that's something that's in here just to make it work, because all the way down here I have some helper classes that are actually the classes that are the class form of the serialized
Yeah,
result
otherwise
that
you
we
needed
get
to create these classes in camel case, and that's a bit weird
I
in
don't
C
want
Sharp.
that,
So
yeah.
okay.
But going back to the code up here, so we can get a street address based on the results that we have, and as you can see right here, we do a get address, and then from the results we're going to order by descending score. And this is actually something that's very similar to what Cognitive Services does, where it has a confidence score of how big the chance is that it's actually correct.
Yeah, you have that in AI services normally, because it's not a definitive answer. It's like, yeah, you probably mean this.
Yeah, and of course with postal code and house number, you are specific enough to get only one result. However, if you're looking for a general address,
if I can imagine if you fill in a street and start doing this, if I see a score here, I would almost expect that small typos will be ignored.
yes, that's true. That is true. I actually do that because one of the streets in the city where I live is actually very long. And then somebody, it's about a mayor, so it's burgemeester. So somebody says burg dot, and then the rest of the name, or there's like 10 different ways of writing that street name. So they filter it out based on the score. Then if we look at all of the information that we get back, we don't only get the city, house number, street and zip code that we will see in the demo shortly, but we also have an ISO 3 code for the country, and we have a subdivision inside of the country, and then even inside of the municipality we can get a subdivision. So there's a lot of information that's available from Azure Maps. Now if we run this code, and I'll open up a terminal and I'll type .NET run, it will ask me to fill in a Dutch postal code if it works. It actually does. So 3062 megabyte, number 60, which should be our office right here.
I think we're there now.
We are. So city in Rotterdam, house number 60 on the KP van der Mandelenlaan. I'm going to make that Dutch because I can't even try to pronounce that in English. So here we get the same or the result back that we would expect. And then if we go 11, 18 and number 354, we'll go to Schiphol, which is the Evert van de Beekstraat, which is actually...
That's I know that address. I think it's Microsoft, right?
That's the Microsoft office in Schiphol, yeah. So this is how relatively straightforward it is to actually talk to the service. But of course there's a lot more. There's a lot more services that they provide. So this was just searching for an address based on some information. And what they did, and this is actually, it was new to me, what they did is, even if we go here to the normal Azure location and we go to, I need to check real quick because I went to samples from here. Here is demo, and you actually have a lot of demo available or already available right here on this page, and we can even go to code samples. I'll find that where that is, but we'll go to the samples.azuremaps.com website. And when I saw this, I thought, well, there's some nice demos available, but there's actually
a lot of demos.
A lot of demos available, but really a lot of demos available. So there's a lot more moving around Azure Maps. They do traffic now, so you can use Azure Maps to route your own cars or your own trucks through traffic or around traffic. They do weather, so you can incorporate weather into predictions of how stuff around your building is going. So maybe based on IoT devices as well, we can combine all of that information to take precautions in defending our homes against floodings, for instance. So they really have a lot of information available in there.
So it's awesome to see that this service is so rich. I didn't even know it was in there.
But I think that's the problem with some of the Azure services that we have right now, right? There's so much available that we're not entirely sure.
I think for some people this is, I live here, like it's normal for
true,
me.
Of course, or at least I hope so. I hope that's the case.
But it's super interesting because I think having, especially if it's your core business, you will probably compare this to some of the other offerings, public APIs, endpoints from Google, whatever. But if you would need an add-on, you're fully dedicated in the Azure stack, and I have the same thing with cognitive services. I would like to have this, and it's fully packed and serviced, and it's like exactly like minimal what you need, or even to get started in this whole thing without exploring some other service, having a contract there, just use it. But this seems pretty advanced.
But to me too, it started out with, I would like to have a way of making a complete address based off of postcode and house number.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at all of the services and thought, well, I'm not going to pay an external service to do something that I think I can do by myself, but where do I get the information?
Mm-hmm.
And then Azure Maps popped up, and well, 15 lines of code and we now built our own API about that.
Yeah, with a rich API like this, you will even get creative in like, what can I else offer my customer to make this easier? Because sometimes you're on the site and like looks so, you're like, wow, someone put a lot of effort in this to make this work, and
let's use this.
Wouldn't know how to use it. And if it's just there, like it's what you say. It's probably 15 lines of code, and it's fully serviced. And I think having it in Azure, the security is correct. Like you can reach the endpoint, probably as a proper SLA, or it's being used a lot. Awesome. I wouldn't think of looking there even for this.
I didn't either, and now I did. Just one little thing I would like to get back to. So samples.azuremaps.com. You can run all of these samples in the browser. Some are WebGL, so they take a little bit longer to load. And like you can see here, it actually has a loading screen, and then we can have some 3D visualization. The cool thing is, down here there's a blue source code button, or if you go to a sample, you can have the source code from here as well. Everything's on GitHub. It's all open source and out there and available. Awesome. You can pick this, make this your starting point, and based off of that, build your own implementation of whatever you need.
I think I'm gonna organize a hackathon, make some kind of AR WebGL thing or something.
Make sure to include me in the invitation. I would like to come.
Looks really cool. Cool, Rick. Thanks for this information. I didn't know.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.